Why did NASA, after months of preparation, suddenly decide not to bring astronauts back aboard Boeing's Starliner? Could it have been an unspoken risk, or is there something bigger at play? And why did they later claim it would have been safe after all? Let's dive deep into the mystery behind NASA's decision and what might be hidden from the public eye. After over 3 months in space, Boeing's Starliner capsule successfully returned to Earth, landing in the desert of White Sands, New Mexico. The mission was supposed to last 10 days, yet it extended far beyond that. But something didn't go as planned. The spacecraft returned without the 2 NASA astronauts it launched with. Originally, Barry Wilmore and Sunita Williams were set to be part of this landmark flight. Yet, NASA chose to bring Starliner back without any crew aboard. The reason? NASA cited precaution. But in an unexpected twist, the space agency later confirmed that, had the astronauts been on board, the landing would have gone just as smoothly, ensuring their safe return. This contradiction leaves us wondering, if the landing was perfectly safe, why were the astronauts reassigned? What led NASA to change its plans at the last moment? And, more importantly, what aren't they telling us? Boeing's Starliner was designed to be a major part of NASA's commercial crew program, tasked with transporting astronauts to and from the International Space Station, ISS. This mission, known as the Crew Flight Test, CFT, was meant to demonstrate Starliner's readiness for manned spaceflight. But when the capsule made its return, one major detail stood out: there were no astronauts inside. Originally, NASA astronauts Barry Wilmore and Sunita Williams were scheduled to make the journey home aboard Starliner. Yet, just weeks before the return flight, NASA made the call to leave the spacecraft uncrewed. They reassigned Wilmore and Williams to another mission, effectively postponing their return to Earth. The question on everyone's mind is, why? The official word from NASA was simple: safety first. The agency explained that, due to the issues Starliner experienced on its flight up to the ISS, they decided it was best not to take any unnecessary risks. But this explanation seemed to fall apart when NASA's Steve Stick later confirmed that the landing went exactly as planned and that the astronauts would have landed safely if they had been on board. If we'd had a crew on board, they would have experienced the same deorbit burn, re-entry, and landing sequence, and it would have been a safe, successful landing, Stick reassured the public. This leaves us with a puzzling question: if NASA was confident in the landing's safety, what was the real reason for keeping the astronauts off the flight? Some speculate that the decision may have been influenced by earlier concerns about technical glitches that occurred during the Starliner's initial flight to the ISS. Although the problems didn't affect the spacecraft's ability to dock and return, they could have raised doubts about how it would perform with human lives at stake. Additionally, there's the looming competition between Boeing and SpaceX. With SpaceX's Crew Dragon already proving itself with multiple successful crewed missions, Boeing is under intense pressure to prove that Starliner can perform on the same level. Was this a case of Boeing and NASA playing it too safe, or was there more going on behind the scenes? One thing is clear: NASA's choice to leave the astronauts behind has raised more questions than answers. Could this decision point to deeper concerns about Starliner's reliability, or was it simply a calculated precaution to avoid any potential risks? And how does this decision fit into the larger landscape of the new space race between Boeing and SpaceX? These are the questions we need to explore further as we dive into what really might have been at stake during this mission. This is where things get particularly interesting. NASA's decision to keep the Starliner uncrewed despite later confirming that the astronauts could have landed safely creates a contradiction that has fueled a wave of speculation. If the spacecraft was truly safe, why not proceed with the original plan? And if there was any doubt, why did NASA later assure the public that it would have been a successful crewed landing? One possible explanation is that NASA was being ultra-cautious due to Starliner's previous technical issues. During its journey to the ISS, the spacecraft encountered problems, particularly with its software and docking systems, that could have endangered the mission. Although those issues were resolved, perhaps NASA didn't want to risk any unexpected complications during re-entry, especially considering that Boeing's reputation has been under scrutiny in recent years due to setbacks in both its space and aviation sectors. Yet, this doesn't fully explain the contradiction. NASA is known for being transparent about mission safety, and to suggest the astronauts would have been safe after the fact seems like an unnecessary reassessment. This opens the door for more speculation. Some argue that this decision may have been influenced by political and financial pressures. Boeing, once a titan in aerospace, has faced delays and cost overruns with Starliner, putting it behind SpaceX in the race for NASA contracts. Could NASA have made a strategic choice to hold off on a crewed return to prevent another highly publicized failure? It's possible that sending astronauts aboard a spacecraft with even a small chance of encountering issues could have been catastrophic for Boeing's reputation and, by extension, NASA's credibility in managing these partnerships. Others, more skeptical of the official narrative, have even floated the idea that external pressures, perhaps from stakeholders in the ongoing competition between Boeing and SpaceX, played a role. After all, SpaceX's Crew Dragon has already completed multiple manned missions to the ISS, and any failure by Boeing at this stage could tilt the balance even further in SpaceX's favor. Was NASA, consciously or not, favoring caution over competition? Then, there's the human factor. Wilmore and Williams, the astronauts assigned to the mission, were reassigned to another spacecraft and won't return until February 2025. By then, they will have spent nearly 10 months on the islands, significantly longer than planned. Was this a calculated move to give Boeing more time to ensure Starliner's flawless performance on future missions, or was there simply no rush to bring the astronauts back given the availability of SpaceX's Crew Dragon? In any case, NASA's decision-making process remains a puzzle. On one hand, they claim the mission would have been safe with astronauts on board. On the other hand, they opted for a conservative, uncrewed landing. This has led to a growing sense of unease among space enthusiasts and industry insiders alike, many of whom feel that the full story has yet to be told. And it's here that we begin to wonder, is there more to NASA's decision than meets the eye? Could this cautious approach be masking deeper concerns about Starliner's readiness, or is it simply a case of playing it safe to protect Boeing's position in the highly competitive commercial spaceflight sector? These lingering doubts only add to the mystery surrounding the Starliner mission, and they set the stage for even more speculation. With NASA's cautious decision and the contradictory safety assurances, it's no surprise that conspiracy theories have surfaced. Some speculate that NASA may be hiding deeper technical issues with the Starliner, issues that weren't disclosed to the public. Could there have been unreported malfunctions that posed a potential risk to the astronauts? Perhaps the spacecraft wasn't fully ready for human re-entry, and NASA downplayed the real danger to protect Boeing's image. Another theory suggests corporate rivalry between Boeing and SpaceX might have played a role. SpaceX, with its successful Crew Dragon missions, has outpaced Boeing in the race for NASA contracts. By keeping the astronauts off the Starliner, some believe NASA was quietly shielding Boeing from the risk of a public failure, which would only widen the gap between the two companies. There's also speculation that Boeing needed more time to refine its systems, and NASA's decision allowed them a grace period to perfect their technology without the pressure of a manned mission. Finally, some of the more outlandish theories even suggest that the astronauts were held back for secret missions or to prepare for classified objectives on the ISS. While these theories stretch credibility, they reflect the uncertainty and speculation that NASA's contradictory actions have sparked. Looking ahead, the future of Boeing's Starliner remains uncertain. Originally set to begin 6-month crewed rotations to the ISS in 2025, this timeline has already been delayed. As Boeing reviews the data from this latest mission, the next steps are crucial. NASA will need to decide whether to proceed with confidence in Boeing's spacecraft or continue relying on SpaceX's Crew Dragon for its crewed missions. Despite the speculation and conspiracy theories, one thing is clear: Boeing still has a lot to prove. Starliner's safe return was a milestone, but it will need to demonstrate consistent, flawless performance before it can compete on equal footing with SpaceX. Whether NASA's decision was based on caution, hidden risks, or political considerations, the pressure is on Boeing to ensure the Starliner is ready for its next crewed mission. As the commercial space race heats up, only time will reveal if Starliner can rise to the challenge or if it will remain in the shadow of its competitors.